Robert Eggers The Northman is a bloody and bloody ambitious Viking epic that showcases the filmmaker's fervent dedication to historical accuracy and his artistic penchant for long continuous takes. Both of these signature Eggers elements are on display in one of the Northman's most technically challenging action sequences, a Viking Berserker raid on a Slav village. Presented in one long take, a oner, the scene tracks Viking Prince Amleth and his warriors as they storm the village and swiftly subdue its inhabitants with animalistic savagery. It is a brutal yet meticulously crafted sequence full of violence and mayhem. IGN spoke with director Robert Eggers and star Alexander Skarsgård about the preparation and precision required to pull off the Berserker raid sequence.
Working with Robert Eggers is demanding because all the scenes are one long continuous take. There are no cuts, which is physically and mentally quite exhausting, but it's also tremendously helpful because it means that you don't have to stop and start. In a long, tough sequence like that, you basically just jump in and then you do the whole thing, and it's a real privilege as an actor to get to move around a set that is built exactly like that Slav village would have been built 1,000 years ago, and everything around you is 100% real because, again, Robert is all about historical accuracy. So it was basically just my job was to just deep down trying to find that more animalistic side and that inner beast, and the sheer determination and focus of getting into that world and moving through that village. When you shoot a scene like this, you shoot it multiple camera so that you can cover different angles, and if something doesn't quite work, it's okay because you can fix it later. Kurosawa started, or is sort of the master of multiple camera, historical epic action sequences. And he's using the 3 best DPs in Japan and is really, really precise about knowing what these different cameras are going to cover. And when he's in the middle of shooting these sequences, his editor comes up to him, with film strips, and he says, edit there, edit there, edit there. That is multiple camera craft at its highest. But at its worst, it's set up 5 cameras, do a bunch of figure it out later. This is the complete opposite of that, where we have, it's two shots. After he jumps onto the horse, then that's another shot. But in 2 continuous shots, we do this raid, which requires a lot of planning. So we starts in the script, and then Jaron Blaschke, my DP, and I were working with a storyboard artist. Generally, we worked with this dude, Adam Pescott, but this scene was with a guy named William Simpson. And we start, the process that I have with Jaron, he shares the authorial voice with me for sure. So much of the visual language of this film comes from Jaron's noggin, and we're looking at condensing and consolidating and making everything the most streamlined as it can. So we start imagining what this would be, and we have a model of the village, which we keep moving the structures around, because we got to figure out how we can do all this choreography and also how we can move the camera through there. And then we start working with C.C. Smith, the stunt coordinator, and the people at Devil's Horseman who work with the horses and stunt horses so there might be something that's in the script or in our imaginations or in the storyboard where CC says, we can't quite do that with a horse. A horse is never gonna do that. It could do this. These are all kind of close, what can work? And we might say, okay, well maybe if we can get special effects to have a huge splash of mud at that point, we can get away with the horse gag being not exactly what we imagined. So it starts out with all that kind of initial planning, and then we start showing up to the location and taping out where we're going to put each building, and everyone's measuring everything, making sure the distances of everything, and the crane arm, and can we get the camera truck through this certain whatever, and we had to build a road to put the truck on. It just never ends, really. It really never ends. And then we start bringing the stunt guys to rehearse there, and they're working with Alex behind the scenes all the time on all this stuff. How many hours of rehearsal? I couldn't possibly tell you. How many hours of planning? I couldn't possibly tell you, but it's
It's a lot of work.
Weeks before we shot the scene, we went out there with the camera department to figure out the speed of the run, and again, starting to ascend the wall. How would we climb? Where would we be? How fast can we do that? How fast would the camera move? And that was for the raid, but for all the big set pieces, all the big action scenes, demanded a tremendous amount of rehearsals and working on the choreography so that we could have the fluidity when we shot it.
Executing the Berserker raid wasn't just a challenge for the actors, it required just as much precision and exertion from the camera operators. Eggers delved into the specifics on the lenses and rigs used by the team in order to pull off the sequence.
We probably used a 32 for the whole thing, because that tends to be what we were using a lot on this film. But I think in some ways you are kind of thinking about, like, if you were editing this, like, you might have a wide shot here, and then you might have a close up here, and then you might like have a medium shot here, and then you might, and we're just doing that without cutting ever. We used this head called a Libra head, which is something that the camera operator has like two little wheels that is able to like move the head around, and he's sitting like in a tent somewhere, like moving around. And then we have like a telescopic crane arm that can move like this. So with like the first shot, the Berserkers are all here, and we have the camera truck here, and the crane is positioned out, and then with the camera pointed at the Berserkers, the back of them. And then as they tear their cloaks off, the camera comes around to like profile, and then forward, as in the truck is driving, and then leading them, and then the camera pans and then like telescopes up the wall and then over, and then the shot ends, right?
I had my axe and could use that and climb up. And there are big beams, so I obviously had done a couple of rehearsals where I looked at the wall and figured out where it would be, so that when we rush up, it wouldn't be like, wait, this is a good so that we could keep the momentum. And again, it's a relationship between us and the camera, because I knew exactly when the camera would land, and then it would start to go up. So, and the speed of that, it gets very technical, and it's an emotional scene, which means you have to figure out all the technical aspects of it before you get there, so that when you start shooting, you can be 100% committed and not worry about, where's the camera now? I gotta slow down, I gotta speed up.
Given all the complexities of shooting the Berserker raid sequence, as well as others in the film, was Eggers ever tempted to break his no multiple camera coverage rule? He was candid with us about why he put himself and his cast and crew through hell for this particular sequence.
Having prepped this movie, I know why people like it, why there's only like a 1917 or a Revenant like every now and again, because it's really hard to do. We were not gonna ever give up, but I would be up late thinking like, of course, this is why people shoot movies multiple camera, because this is insane, But I think I will be honest and say that there is part of it that is, this is my third film, and it's a big movie, and Jaron and I are a little bit saying to like our colleagues and people in the know, we can do this. Like, check it out, we can do this. And maybe that's not the greatest reason, but I can't not admit that there is a bit of that. But the real reason is that I just feel like it's so much more immersive when you're just in it. Where the bad version of the multiple camera action sequence is on screen, you can't follow what's happening. It's just a bunch of cuts, and you can't follow the action. And with this way of working, you absolutely can. A movie with fight scenes that are so much more elevated than this is Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and something that I love about those fight scenes is that every single beat you can follow. You can follow the intention of every single sword thrust or cut. And by the way, it's lightning fast, and you can still follow every single moment. And so that is another reason why these like long extended takes is something that was appealing to us.
While The Northman may appear as if it was all executed practically, modern filmmaking requires special effects in order to keep the cast and crew safe on set, especially when filming such a stunt-heavy action sequence as the Berserker raid. Eggers explained what role special effects played in post-production.
It's erasure and enhancement, and it's all invisible kind of things. I mean, some of the javelins that are being thrown are real. Some of them are CG. Some of the arrows and shields are real. Some of them are CG. When you're climbing a wall, you need a safety wire with today's health and safety. When you jump off a palisade, you need a safety wire. When you fall off a horse, you need a safety wire. So so there's lots of cranes with safety wires that have to go away. And also they are embedded into the ground, but you could still kind of tell that the earth wasn't quite the same where some of the horses would fall. There's mats and things, and so we clean that up. So that, Alex hits somebody in the face, there's a blood spurt. We had a guy with, a hydraulic blood spurt, but it's it could have been 10% more, that kind of a thing.
For all the technical precision required from the actors and camera crew to execute an action scene, Eggers and Skarsgård said what this brutal sequence reveals about Amleth and Viking Berserker culture was the most important element to capture.
The scene that precedes the sequence is a crucial moment and also crucial to understanding the raid, because it is the transformation in which Amleth and the other berserkers shed their humanity and let the inner beast out, transforms into their spirit animal. Amleth his name is Björnulfur, which means bear wolf, so he's a hybrid of a bear and a wolf. So in that scene, during that shamanistic ritual, they're in a trance, and in that trance they come out as animals. So for the raid, I had to revert to some more atavistic state in his posture, body language, the way he moved, and when walking down through the village, I wanted him to be a predator on the hunt and completely fearless and determined. And again, to any kind of trace of humanity had to be gone.
Neil Price, one of the Viking historians who was working on the film, hypothesized that Berserkers must have been really big guys who fought in the way of acting like a bear, and that wolf warriors might have been smaller and more wily and cunning and stuff like that. And Alex's character is supposed to be the size of a bear, but with the cunning of a wolf. There's many hypotheses about these guys, but just what we went with is the idea that through a shamanic weapons dance, they fall into this state where they believe that they are literally transforming into beasts. They lose their humanity and become literal bears and wolves, or werebears and werewolves, and are sort of invincible on the battlefield. These figures exist in Viking poetry and in the sagas, but there are accounts from the Viking Age of people who've been attacked by Vikings saying these guys seemed absolutely crazy. I've never seen anything like this crazed, insane rage on the battlefield. Thinking about if they were a bear or a wolf and what their fighting style might be and whatever, but I think that because this Slavic village isn't full of elite warriors, the Vikings that invaded the village don't have to do the most complicated stuff to win. At the end of the movie, and even in the fight with the Mountain Dweller, there's some more sophisticated fighting styles that are based on what we think Viking fighting styles might have been. But if you are the most elite warrior faced with kind of a dad who's in the militia or whatever, you just kind of, and it's also a way to strike terror into your enemies. I mean, one of the very few compromises that I'm not particularly happy about, but I knew that it was just the way that it is because of the size of the movie, is that I couldn't show penises. The movie ends with a climactic naked sword fight on a volcano, and I actually kind of think it's good there because it might have been distracting from the drama. If a few of the berserkers had been entirely naked in this sequence, it would have been even scarier, I think.
As badass as the Berserker raid may seem, Eggers' intent here was not to glorify violence or romanticize Viking brutality. Instead, he hopes the final sequence leaves viewers emotionally conflicted because of the savagery they just watched unfold. The film's sound design was key in making sure the terrifying reality of what a Berserker raid would have actually been like was not lost on audiences.
Something that I was really trying to do in the sound design is make sure that the crowd sounded real. It can be really hard when you're doing war scenes because the people who do crowd voice work like have this job and they know and they're really great technicians, so they know how to like scream and wail and all this kind of stuff. But I kept impressing upon everyone like, but you have to be in the, you can't just scream, you have to feel it, you know, like if there's just generic shouts and cries, like this is not going to be effective. Like every time a mother shrieks for her children, like that, we need to experience that pain, because otherwise we are glorifying the violence and not portraying the horror of the scene. So that was really important to me in the sound design. I mean, it's tricky because this scene, on the other hand, there are ways in which it is thrilling, and you're seeing how good Amleth is at being a warrior. But the hope is that in the next scene, in the aftermath, like you feel guilty for any thrills you might have had in the previous scene.
In the end, Eggers believes all the grueling planning and filming of the raid scene paid off.
There's always things that can be better. I mean, there's always things that can be better. But this is like, you know, one of my two favorite scenes in the movie that got the closest to how I was imagining it. Yeah.
What did you think about The Northman? Let us know in the comments. And for more about the film, check out our review and watch Alexander Skarsgård play our Viking quiz. And as always, be sure to like and subscribe to IGN.